The 1920s was a time when perfume really started to become popular, because before that, in the 1910s and late 1800s, perfume, especially for women and especially in more conservative countries like America or England, in general, perfume was more of something a bit scandalous, really. And a lot of women, for that reason, really didn't want to get involved with perfume until later years. Perfume became much more widely accepted and greatly sought after. And it really was in the 20s that it became a completely normal thing for women to wear perfume all the time. In fact, it was such a craze in the 20s that I guess some teenage girls started to eat perfume. They would dunk some bread in it and eat it because they thought it would give them a special shine or sparkle. Of course, that's probably not a good idea since most perfume is 90% alcohol. But in general, the Roaring Twenties was really a time, especially for French perfume. Most perfumes at that time were being produced by these mega perfume houses, mostly in Paris. And a lot of those perfumes, interestingly, are still around today. And so I will go through kind of the top 5 most popular perfumes that came out in the 1920s. One of which used to be quite a staple is Emerod. This is by Coty, a French brand, originally founded by François Coty early on in the 20th century. Coty as a brand, a perfume brand, used to be all the rage for many decades. Only recently have they kind of fallen off as a perfume manufacturer. Even this, Emerod, the thing about this is that it used to be a really luxurious, high-class perfume. But today it's like discount, drugstore, really cheap, almost hated perfume. Even though it is straight from 1921, and when it was first launched and several decades after that, it was really a high-quality sort of perfume. And it has notes of citrus right off the bat, and it has a few resinous notes thrown in there, and then really prominent wood notes in the bottom. And I think the main reason why some people might not like this scent is because it is a little sharp. It has almost a bitterness in the beginning, but once that goes away pretty quickly, and then you're left with the pretty refreshing yet warm scent. This is a cologne, which, a relatively weak concentration of perfume, but it still has a really, definitely a vintage smell to it. And so if you're looking for an authentic and affordable 1920s perfume, Emerod is definitely the way to go. Emerod means emerald in French, and it was inspired off of the emeralds of the Middle East of the time. They wanted to go for something exotic and lavish. But the next option here for perfumes from the Roaring Twenties is something very similar to Emerald, in my opinion. Shalimar by Guerlain, which is still a very popular and luxurious perfume brand today. The thing about Shalimar, came out in 1925. I would argue it is very, very similar to Emerald, even though it is like quadruple the price. It has almost identical citrus notes in the beginning, even though I would say the citrus notes in Shalimar are a bit drier, not quite as sharp. Then Shalimar has very similar resin notes, but I would argue more of a burnt resin and more of a smoky incense nature. The incense note Emerald lacks, but the thing about this perfume is that in the 20s, this was the favorite of the flappers, women going out to the bars, which was scandalous at that time. And really living the crazy lifestyle for that era. And this is definitely a very heavy, smoky, sultry perfume. Back then it wouldn't have been something that a respectable woman would have worn, but it really made a huge splash in the perfume industry at that time, and over the decades it just became more of an average, perfume rather than something scandalous. But definitely has an interesting place in history, Shalimar, and it still is popular today, although not quite as popular as it was in its heyday. But even so, you could still get it. You could find it at department stores and stuff. Of course, you can't go without mentioning Chanel No. 5, which also came out in 1921, like Emerod. This perfume, obviously created by Chanel, which is still a huge brand, it is kind of a bookmark or a cornerstone in French perfume and just perfume in general, because it's this ageless, ever classic, ever popular perfume, and it has notes, light, white floral notes, mostly in the beginning, kind of a golden aura, and it's weighted down by some wood notes and very prominent notes of musk. The musk becomes stronger, I would say, over time, especially notes of civet. Originally, this was made with real civet, but these days, fortunately, they only use synthetic civet, so it's good for the animals, of course. The thing about Chanel No. 5 is that it's so versatile that you can use it for just about any occasion. And when it came out in the 1920s, it was also very unique because it was one of the first perfumes to use aldehydes, which are synthetic chemicals that give a certain brightness to perfume. And I mean, as soon as this perfume came out, it was pretty much an instant hit. And it's still a big hit today. A lot of people wear it, even today. And so really it's not just a benchmark from the 1920s, but still a benchmark even in the 2020s, if you think about it. And another perfume from Coty, which I unfortunately don't own, is called Lemon, and it came out, I believe, in 1927, kind of a delicate little bottle. And as with Emerald, and as with most perfumes from Coty, it kind of lost its popularity, no longer considered a lavish, high-class perfume, more just a, kind of a cheap, perfume, an alternative to more expensive options. But when it came out, it was certainly something. It has notes of some aldehydes, fruit notes like peach and bergamot, then floral notes like jasmine, geranium, orchid, rose, and then lots of musk, vanilla, sandalwood, and lots of powderiness. Perfumes from the 20s were typically quite powdery, just because that was a relatively popular scent that people liked at the time, along with musk. And the thing about Lemon, which, really the thing about any Coty perfume, especially from the 20s, is that they really were coming out with things that were unique for that time. This had aldehydes in it, as with Chanel No. 5, which was still really, really new for perfumes at that time. And also during this time, perfume houses were starting to use more and more synthetic fragrances, which may not sound great, but people at that time were really into synthetic fragrances because before that time, only natural fragrances were available. So the invention of a synthetic fragrance was something new and exciting, even though today we usually prefer natural fragrances, but back then it was definitely something to aim for. So Lemon, definitely something special. And the last one that I have to mention, because it was such a mega luxury thing, is called Bella Doggia by Caron, which is still a huge, very luxurious Parisian perfume brand. The thing about Bella Dolgia is that it kind of comes in this interesting little, reminds me of a prickly pear, kind of a bottle. And it also came out in 1927, and it was extremely expensive. These days, if you manage to get your hands on a bottle, it will still be extremely expensive. It has notes of carnation, rose, jasmine, lily of the valley, and some base notes of clove, sandalwood, musk, and vanilla. So this was a very, very finely crafted perfume designed to be expensive and really out of the reach of most people. And of course, when something is out of your reach, of course you want to reach out and grab it. So, you know, even the ads of this perfume when it came out, and even several decades after, all the ads were designed to show off how luxurious this was, how high class and rich it was. And just in general, it's associated with, you know, the high life. And when this came out in the 20s, you know, whoever could afford it definitely would try to get their hands on it. So those are pretty much the top 5 perfumes from the 20s that I can think of to mention. The most popular ones anyway, and the ones that made the biggest splash in history. But if you have any other ideas for perfumes from the 20s, you can always comment down below. If you like the video, leave a like, maybe subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.